Good evening and welcome to Dog Talk. I'm Dan Camilleri.
And I'm Laura McKillop. We'd like to start by thanking Enduro for their ongoing support in bringing you our weekly Q&A. Tonight we're fortunate enough to be speaking with Deb Eden, who is the New South Wales Police Force first female dog handler.
Deb will be picking who she thinks has asked the best question of the night, and they will win a bag of Enduro high-energy food for working dogs with real kangaroo meat.
Hey Deb, how you going?
Hey, how you going, Laura?
Good, thank you.
How was your day, Deb?
Good, yeah, no, going good. We got lots of lambs on the ground at the moment, so just busy making sure that's all okay.
Keeping them dry, a bit wet up there?
Oh, we had a bit of a few really hot days with a lot of storms, and we actually got one lamb that surprisingly enough got a bit fly bone, but he didn't make it. So that's sort of very unusual because it happened in such a short time and very, very quickly. So yeah, so busy doing that.
And for the people out there that don't know Deb Eden, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm originally from the Northern Beaches in Sydney, down at Avalon. Grew up there. One of four kids. We lived on in a house high up on a hill, basically. And if ever us kids needed to go anywhere, we had to walk or bike it or anything like that. Anyway, we were heavily involved in the surf club and nippers and and that sort of thing. So grew up with a passion for horses, but obviously we didn't, we weren't set up for horses or anything. And my parents sort of said to me at the time, the only time you're going to get a horse is when you finish your HSC and you've done year 12, and then you can get a horse. So I literally waited until my last exam, found a horse in Duffy's Forest and bought this little Arab gelding. Could have been disastrous because I only rode him for about 20 minutes, but I just fell in love. I was just so keen. And he went on to win a lot of ribbons. We won the National Arabian Stud Horse Show. We won champion double registered and a few things like that. So I spent a lot of my time groveling somehow to get a lift from Avalon up to Duffy's Forest so I could ride my horse at the riding school he was at. I even remembered jumping on the back of some fast motorbike and having to go around Bilgola Bends, and I was terrified. But whichever way I could get up there to ride these horses, I was prepared to do. So I'd waited long enough. So I anything was, I'd jump at any chance. After that, so I finished year 12. I moved out of home almost straight away. I moved out to Wilberforce, and I worked for a really lovely dressage lady out at Wilberforce that was meticulous with her dressage horses. She had quite a lot of warm bloods and ones that were retired, and she taught me just about grooming and caring for these horses. And even the retired horses were groomed every day. Their feet were cleaned out, their frogs purple sprayed, their stables had to be immaculate, not an ounce of manure left in them. And she really set me up for the best start in anything I did, because I knew, to be fairly finicky, and perfection was sort of, went from there. So after that, I bought another Arab from the same breeder as my first horse out at Freeman's Reach, and broke in a 5-year-old Arab, actually. She wasn't broken in because she had a nasty scar on her nose. And spent all my money on lessons and showing, and competed in saddle classes, Arabian saddle classes, and some halter, but mainly under saddle. And we did mainly at the big shows. We did East Coast Championships, the Nationals, and there's one other I just can't really think. Oh, Sydney Royal was one we did, and it took me about 3 years, and we won at Sydney Royal, the Arabian Mare under saddle. So that was a really big achievement. And then we won Bridle Path Hack. She won everything. She was just really successful. But again, like, that was my passion. I'd waited so long to get there. So I was so focused and so driven on putting all my time and money and energy into the horses. So it was during that time I discovered that I wasn't going to be a millionaire working with horses. I decided I better get a real job. And that's when I thought about, joining the police force. So I joined when I was 23. At that time, it was more of a mature-aged student. But it was a really good start because I had some, worldly experiences compared to a lot of the young ones that go straight from school, straight from high school down to the academy. So I did 6 months down there, came out, and my first station was Castle Hill. So from there I did about 3 years in general duties. And I remember going to a job in Baulkham Hills that needed a police dog for it. And yeah, we got there and I saw this police dog car and the handler in there, and I was so nervous, but I bravely sort of went up to him and said g'day and said, are there any women in the dog squad, And he's like, no, but we're looking for one. And I'm like, what? Really? You could have knocked me over with a feather. I was so and I just thought, right, from then that's me, I'm in. So I joined up at the gym the very next day. I did lots of weight training, lots of fitness training. I ran 4Ks every day with a backpack, and I had bricks in the backpack, and I ran with my German Shepherd at the time, and I used to run 4Ks every day and try and beat my time every day. So I was so driven. I collected any information I could about the dog squad and what I could find out, what I needed to do. And the next step was basically to get myself on an induction course. And an induction course is where police officers go and do a bit of it's a bit of an insight into, a week of the dog squad and what it's like out on the road. So I applied for one of those. First of all, induction courses rarely come around. You basically got to wait for a dog handler to die or leave the dog squad, because at the time back then there were 12 dog handlers in 4 regions. So my region was the Northwest region, and then there was Southwest, North and South, and there were 12 dog handlers per region, so 48 all up. So, and that was all they had back in those days. So anyway, got myself on an induction course, and that was 5 days of really intense training where you did a lot of scenarios and lifelike situations with dog handlers and their police dogs, and they would set up training tracks like tracking with one of their dogs, like the handler would track and you would just sort of, follow along. Lots of sort of fitness tests and things like that. They had to take, or before you even started, you had to do a fitness test. check your heart rate and your blood pressure and your, body fat and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, so away I go on this induction course, and there were 7. I just found the paperwork. Actually, there were 7 applicants, 5 blokes and 2 girls. So, and obviously I was one of them. We learnt a lot in that week. It was a lot of fitness. Like, we would have to run through really intense, dense bushland with other dog handlers. We would go through sort of rough terrain. You may have to go across sort of rivers or wade through water or across logs, and you were just running your heart out the whole time. Like, you just because these blokes had eyes at the back of their heads. They knew if you were slacking off or you had to go back, just jogging along, like, they knew. And that day sifted out a couple of guys. They ended up with injuries and had to retire from the course. Anyway, it seemed like we'd been running for hours, and we got to the end and they gave us a scenario. Okay, what happens if your dog gets injured, out on a track? You're out in the middle of nowhere. What are you going to do? Well, you're going to have to carry the dog back, aren't you? Like, he's injured. So they said, righto, get back there. There's 5 or 6 bags of shavings, and they're in Hessian bags. They weighed about, 15 to 20 kilos, and you had to carry these bags back. And 15 to 20 kilos is the size of a Kelpie, so not the size of a German Shepherd. So they were being kind on us. And I think there was 1 or 2 bags less than what we were there. So basically, occasionally you didn't have to carry one because they were being sort of shared around. Anyway, this was your dog. So going through water and all that sort of stuff, you had to carry it up. You couldn't let him get wet. Juggling, sort of climbing up canals and all sorts of things. It was a really, true to life scenario. But yeah, so they test you at things like that. But on the last day was the most frightening day I've had ever in my life. We had to run for an attack dog. So I'm going to say there was 5 of us then. I was the only girl at that time. The other girl injured herself. Anyway, so what you had to do, so there were dog handlers there. They taught you, you had to wear a padded attack arm, and you had to entice the dog and get it really aggressive and just pretend that you were just a really, aggressive offender. And, didn't take much to get these dogs wound up. They knew their job. Anyway, so I watched a few blokes go, and I'm like, right, yep, I think I've got this. Okay, right, my turn. And I lined up in front of a handler whose dog was named Barney. And Barney was a long-haired German Shepherd, I reckon about 40 kilos, this big, hairy monster, and he was savage. And anyway, so enticed the dog, got him all excited, and then turned and off I ran. I made the fatal mistake, okay? Instead of, they teach you to pull your arm and elbow like right out away from your body. I missed that part of the debrief. I don't know where I was, and I'm running my heart out, and just knowing this canine with teeth baring is boring down on you like a steam train was just, you were crapping yourself. It was frightening. Anyway, he's hit me at the side of my side because I didn't have my arm out. I had it close to my body, but I had it out away from my body, yay, but not quite the right thing. He hit me with such force. I did a huge somersault in the air, landed on the ground with his dog on top of me. And all I could think of is get up, get up, get up, because the part of the scenario was you had to get up and play with the dog with the arm. Like whilst he's hanging on your arm, it's part of the game. It's part of the whole experience for them. It's the best activity in the world for them. They love it. And so this little, voice in my head was just get up, get up. So up I got, and anyway, dog handler came and pulled the dog off my arm, and I'm walked back to the group, tail between my legs, going, oh shit, I've stuffed it. I've just shown that I'm weak. The dog can knock me over. All these horrible thoughts came into my head, and I was devo. So anyway, the final afternoon, we had to all sort of sit in our group and just debrief, what do you think of the course? Course is over. Do you still want to be a dog handler? What did you like? What didn't you like about it? That general sort of thing. And all the other blokes pretty much said the same thing. Great course, loved it. Yes, I want to be a dog handler. Fantastic, terrific. And I just thought to myself, I want to say something different. Like, I blend in. So, yes, I did say it was a fantastic course, I said, but there were times I was really scared. Like what we just did was absolutely terrifying. And that's where in life, if you can show that bit of honesty, put yourself out there, okay, and at the end of the day, no one can say that running for an attack dog with an arm is not frightening. Hello.
Yeah.
So that gave me a lot of brownie points. I learnt later that I was honest, and I had the balls to get back up and get into it. Like, just don't fall in a heap and cry. Like, just get into it. So anyway, so there was one position, and thankfully I was told a few weeks, I can't remember how long, but I was told I was the successful applicant. So it was fantastic. So I had to wait a year until the novice dog squad course was running, because there were other induction courses that had to be done in other areas. So basically I headed down to Goulburn. I get down there, and there's my dog. He's in the kennel, and I know nothing about him, but there he is. And I was told his name was Jake. So off I go to get him, and that's him in the pictures, okay, behind me. So Jake was about 23 kilos. He wasn't a big, burly, buff-headed German Shepherd. He was short. Some dog handlers used to tease me and call him a corgi. I hated that. I really hated that. Anyway, but he was perfect for my stature. I was 50 kilos ringing wet there. I was just like a greyhound. So they match the dog with the person, hence I ended up with Jake. And my God, that dog was he was a legend. He had the best nose. He loved tracking. That was his forte. And he just had a brilliant temperament, a brilliant mind, and at times just would not switch off. That nose dictated everything. So a little bit of trivia for everyone. Humans have 5 million olfactory cells in their nose. Okay, a dash hound, and I know you guys have got dash hound. A dash hound has 125 million olfactory cells in their little nose. Well, a German Shepherd has 220 million.
Wow.
So they have the capacity to walk into your house and go, oh, "Oh, Laura, you've cooked a baked dinner and you've washed the floors and you've done this and I can smell the other dogs in here and I can smell that and that and that." They just get this massive waft of smell wherever they go. And basically, as a police dog, we try and just retune their natural instinct and natural ability to smell and hunt for food. And we make them smell and, well, not hunt, but we make them find human scent.
Yeah.
Well, effectively, they are, right? You're teaching them to search, to hunt.
Yeah. So whether it's for missing kids or offenders or, any of that type of stuff, multitude of things, you're just redirecting what their, their whole being is, but just fine tuning it. So, yeah.
So once you got down to Goulburn and got your dog Jake and all the rest, what's the process from there to actually become part of the dog squad? Like, is there another whole selection to make the team? Yeah, right.
Once you get down there, you're not in. You're not in the dog squad. Like, you're not cheering and going, yay, I made it. You have, I think it was about 16 weeks. You have a 16-week novice dog handler course that you have to do, and you get tested every week. You can fail, first week into the course. See ya. Go back to your patrol and go back to GDs. So they have this hanging over your head the whole time. So you've got to improve, every week. Okay. You and your dog have got to improve. Like, yes, they're there to teach you and guide you, but you've got to put the pieces of the puzzle together and you've got to show that you're moving forward and you're getting somewhere. So that I might just sort of quickly talk about in my era, we only ever had general purpose police dogs. Okay.
Okay.
Now they're specialized and they have different dogs for different specialized sort of areas and that type of stuff. But back then there was only a general purpose police dog. So what they were taught was obedience, agility, tracking, searching, man work, and drug work. So, basically, that one of the main areas we use as a dog handler with our dogs is obedience and agility. Everything we do is based around those two sort of areas. So we trained a lot in that area, with them. So on our Friday exam day, we had theory and then we had our practical exam. Well, my boss, Ross Parkin, I don't know whether I should have said his name, he was coming down to sack me. Okay. I didn't know that. He told me this later. I had no idea. Anyway, so down he came, and I'll just touch a little bit on tracking and then I'll go into a bit of detail just to explain what tracking is. So tracking is when you put a harness on a dog and you attach a long line like a lunge lead. Okay, and this is where a lot of my horse skills came into just such good value because, your line work, the attention on your lead, on your long line, like you couldn't let it be saggy or anything. You had to have sort of just that right amount of tension on the line. So many things that related to my horse experiences related back to dogs. So, that gave me a really good head start without even realizing it. So tracking, okay, so you basically want that dog to put his nose down on the ground and keep it down on the ground and track, say, an offender that's gone in a straight line from A to B, okay? And you want that dog to put his nose down, track his footsteps on the ground to the very end where the offender is. Okay, that's in an ideal world, that's what you want. Well, week one, that's all we've been taught. Now, there's lots of factors to take into consideration. The wind direction, humidity, the time, like how long the track had been laid.
Sun exposure.
Sorry?
Sun exposure.
Yep. A lot of those things sort of came into it. But anyway, that's okay because I knew what the exam was, okay? I got a track from A to B, straight line. Yep, should get this. And you've got to make sure all your techniques, your handling skills and everything is right. You got to, I won't go into it because it'll, probably bore everyone. So anyway, on this particular exam, we get from A, we get to B, and then there's no article at point B, and the track turns right. So it was a complete 90-degree track, like in the shape of an L. So I get to the end right on B, and you can't see anything. It just looks like you're out in a paddock, okay? You're in a paddock. And the dog comes off the point, and he does a big, wide circle, and then he comes back to the track because, his whole demeanour changes. He lowers himself, the tail's going. You learn to read your dog. Like they have, my dog was pretty easy to read. Like it was like this little light bulb going on his head,
What was the heart doing then, Deb?
Oh, it was just like, good boy, Jake. Good boy. And you've got to show your praise and all of that at the time because they're on the right track. The positivity, and you've got to say, good boy, mate, that's it, good boy. But once we were going right to point C, we were going into a crosswind. Okay, so the track, he would go off the track and back on the track, a little bit like a zigzag. This is one I prepared earlier. So, so I don't know if this is going to work. Okay, so basically, This is your start. There's your article, the pink one at the end. Okay, so the second part was where the wind is going a crossway. So the dog is his blue line. So he would come back to the track. Whoops.
Yeah.
Oh, this way.
Yeah, that's perfect.
That's better. So he would come back to the track. Okay, then you go and step on that spot, and then he'd go off and back on, back to the track. And you knew because of the way his body was and you knowing what your dog does when he indicates. Anyway, so we got to the end of the track and oh my God, like genuine praise is a huge thing when you train a dog, huge, okay? It comes from the heart. It comes from deep inside. And when he got to this article, which was like a rubber ring, I've just gone, good boy, and I've gotten on the ground and I've cuddled him and I've hugged him. I had tears streaming down my eyes because I was so thinking, we haven't done a track like this. We haven't done this, like what's going on? And then when he got to the article and it was like, oh my God, we did it, and my sergeant just shook his head. He's like, I can't sack her at that. She's done a picture perfect, track. And I don't mean to. Anyway, that got me through. And the next part of the exam was the agility. So the requirement was you had to jump, go over an agility, like a hurdle or a up the stairs along a ramp. And at the end of that exercise, you had to put them in a stationary position. So my first one was the hurdle. Okay, Jake, off we go. Hup, over the hurdle he goes. And we'd never done a stationary position before. We'd only ever got them over the hurdles. So suddenly, day one on this exam, we're doing something we've never done before. Anyway, so I'm like, how am I going to do this? Righto, Jake, hup. And then I've gone, sit, like really firm and clear and concise, and that's what they teach you. And this dog's just turned around and dropped his ass and sat, and I've just gone, oh, did you see that? Instead of and I got yelled at that time, praise your dog, you know. But again, I was just like, oh my God, you know. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's just a bit of an explanation about one of the characteristics they look for in a dog handler, which is being genuine. You know, you can't fake it. Like, you can try and fake it, but a good dog handler and a trainer knows genuine praise and that type of thing. So anyway, I ended up going on, completing my course, and getting through. And I actually ended up with ducks of my course, which was another big like, yay, you know. So yeah. So that was that. And then out we go, out into the real world. So
now you graduated. You're in the.
I got a question
Okay,
before
go.
then. When you turn up there, so you get this dog, it's Jake, but how old is Jake? How do you go to bonding with that dog? Or how does that work before you even go into actually
Good
training
question.
it? And what is on Jake before you actually take the reins? And
I had never been on a lead before.
no, but like what does he have to have passed, or what does he have on him before he gets to that level?
Yeah, great question. Great question. You might get a bag of
I
endurance.
was say you're right there, Laura McKillop.
So Jake was older than most dogs we like to start. Most trainee dogs come to us at 12 months of age. And at that stage, way back then, 1994, all our dogs came from members of the public who couldn't keep their dog for whatever reason. There were certain characteristics we would look for in that dog. Number one was temperament. Number two was that they needed to have a real high drive and a high retrieval. Basically, you throw a toy out and he races out, grabs a toy, brings it back to you, because that's the bread and butter of all the work. Well, not all the work, a lot of the work that we do with police dogs. They're going out searching, they're finding something and they're bringing back. Okay. So again, you know, we're just modifying that natural instinct to suit what we need. So the high drive was a really important one. We certainly had to make sure that they weren't shy or timid. We had to test them with guns, make sure they weren't gun shy. There was a whole lot of sort of other things really, but you know, basically, yeah. And at that stage, we only used German Shepherds. So yeah. So Jake came to us as he was 18 months old, and just just a, what can I say, like, best dog in the world. Yeah. And what was the other part of the question?
How do you go bonding with that dog?
Oh, yes. Okay, so once we get our dog, our training course down at Goulburn was 5 days a week, and you'd go home on the weekends and you would practice, okay, and your dog comes home with you. So back then it was fantastic because your dog was with you 24/7. So just like us, when we finish work, dog comes home, comes in our house, bonds with our family. I was single girl at the time. I lived in a small townhouse at North Richmond, you know, small backyard, and his kennel was in the backyard, and he would relax and have his downtime just like what you and I would do at the end of our working day. You know, on weekends, you'd obviously walk them every day. You do a little bit of your training, and because you'd have to, that was very consistent, always doing something with them depending on what you'd done previously in the week. So they would learn when you put your uniform on, your overalls and all that sort of stuff, you know, that you're going to work. So everything became just a repetitive habit-forming exercise, which again is another big part of a police dog's life was, repetitive habit-forming exercises, which was a big part of our training.
Yeah.
So
That said, Monday to Friday, like when you were at work, how much time did you actually get to train your dog?
down at the academy.
No, once you did get into the force.
Well, we're always in the police force, but do you mean once you were
Once you graduated.
No, once graduated, we would do a lot of training with other dog handlers. We'd have actual training days. So where we weren't operational, it'd be a training day, and that's where you'd set up your scenarios, your tracking scenarios, your searching. You might do your attack work. They'd mix it up all the time. But your tracking was your main work. Tracking and searching was, your bread and butter to like once you're out operational. So yeah.
And at the academy in those 16 weeks, what are you taught as a police dog handler?
So you go through all the theory about dogs, bone structure and teeth and all that sort of stuff. Lots of theory you do go through. You learn basically, your obedience, with healing, your sit, your stays, your speak. Getting them to bark is obviously a very important sort of part, and that was really hard if you didn't have a dog that wouldn't bark. You had every day you had to time to the fence, do whatever you could to make that dog bark. I was really lucky because Jake picked it up straight away and used to use the good old command speak, which was great because you needed them to be vocal at times, when they found an offender or when they found a missing person, they sit and they just bark until, the handler comes, to where they are. So, again, you go through the agility. So everything starts off small and then just, increase as they progress. Same thing with the obedience, start off sort of simple and progress. Your tracking, like I harp on about, when we do a track, it wasn't like we ourselves used to have to go out and lay tracks for other handlers as well. So you were taught about your point of line of sight and things like that were really important to make sure that your tracks were concise. So you were taught about scent work, which was really, really interesting because so us as humans, whilst we're sitting here, we've got all this scent on us, okay? Our own perspiration, our perfume, our laundry liquid, all this sort of stuff is just like saturating the chair and the ground where we are, okay? So I always try to sort of explain to people, it's like when you're fueling up a car on a really hot day and you can see the vapors going up. That's exactly what is happening when, that scent, that's the sort of scent that we are leaving as human scent. And then if I was to run away, okay, we leave all this ground scent. So that's the crushing of your boots on the ground and the dirt and the, insects and debris and vegetation and all of that you're disturbing. Okay, there's all this scent coming up out of the ground as well as your human scent coming down. Okay, and also, like if you are chasing an offender, you've also got the fear factor into it. Their adrenaline, their fear makes everything even more, concentrated and saturated. So basically we're taught, with tracking all about scent, the factors that affect it, which are what I discussed before about your wind. I'm just trying to get some of my notes because this was a long time ago. So, oh gosh, I got to try and wing this.
There was wind, there was ground disturbance,
Ground disturbance, time.
humidity.
Time is a big thing. If the weather is right, so just say it's a dewy morning, and there's dew on the ground, perfect, because that also helps trap the scent down on the ground, stops it coming up. On a humid day, it does the opposite. The scent rises and dissipates. Rain, if you have intense rain, well, it washes it away. So there's lots of factors like that. Time's of the essence. So you get to a job as quick as you can. What you've got to do. Okay, for example, say there's a stolen car and the bloke's dumped the car and taken off into bushland or into suburbia, and you've got to get your dog out, harness him up, search for that scent patch where he left, and most of the time, well, he's gotten out of the driver's seat, so there's a good starting point. You cast your dog, okay, because he will tell you where he left and in what direction he went from. Can I just clear one of these old-fashioned fallacies about, oh, look, he left his jumper in the driver's seat. Here, smell this, dog. BS, total BS. It doesn't work like that, okay? It's the fact that...
Oh, no, I've seen a few movies. It has to be true, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. Anyway, so once you cast your dog, depending on your dog's behaviour, the way he pulls into the harness, it's basically, I don't want to make it sound simple, but it is a bit of join the dots, and then the other thing to consider is that, when someone is running away, they don't run in zigzags, okay? They run straight and they run as fast as they can, and they might put a few sort of variants in, but they don't do zigzags, okay? They're hot-footing it through the bush or through the suburbs. So basically joining your dots and away you go. So down in Goulburn, it's very sanitized type area, okay? Because, the other important thing I totally forgot about, pedestrian traffic. So if you had an offender and suddenly, the Greyhound bus has pulled off and everybody's come out and they've all walked across the track and there's people everywhere and all of that, well, goodbye, because all their scent is down there as well. So, that can make or break it as well. What else do they teach you down there? Searching. So another part of your work is searching bushlands or searching suburbia, and your dog, it might be suitable to put a tracking harness on your dog and a lead. You may have to let him go and let him search backyards and that type of stuff. And so that's when they're using their nose up in the air, not so much on the ground, it's more up in the air for human scent and your wind scent and that type of stuff. So that was another type of searching that we do. We also search vehicles, trucks, houses, buildings, containers, all sorts of things. So and it could also be for articles. It can be for stolen gear or multitude of things that has human scent on it. Now, one thing I probably need to just talk about as well, police dogs work for their play. That is what drives them, okay? So at the end, I mentioned with that track, at the end of the track was a rubber ring. And at that rubber ring, I am going to give that dog the time of his life with that toy because he's just done the best thing in the world. And the play and the time you spend with them they're driven on play. You know, their drive to play and to to work and to make you happy was just huge. You know, they just they love their work and they love the reward at the end, whether it's an attack arm, whether it's a play. Like I've played with my dog with back in those days, a 2-cent coin. You know, if that's the only toy I could find around the place, and you add suspicion and inquiry, and you grab it and he's got it, and then all this type of stuff. You really learn how to play with the dog and be involved with them. So a lot of their work is for the play at the end.
Yeah, it's no different to us working for and having a beer at the end of the day, right?
Yeah. So, and then you've got your man work. That speaks for itself. If you're going to, pretty dangerous jobs where you're going to have to release your dog to actually, latch onto someone. That's a pretty serious, position to sort of be in. You don't look at that lightly at all. There's huge factors and huge repercussions, but you sum it all up depending on the job. Like you've got someone that's just robbed a bank and he's taken off with a firearm and whatnot. Well, that's reasonable, reasonable position where you may have to release your dog to take him down. So, and then drug work, that's a whole new topic. That was unreal. Jake was brilliant at drug work. And the other thing I might add too, with depending on what we were doing with the dogs, they had certain equipment that they would wear. And that was how they used to decipher, okay, I'm tracking, okay, I'm searching, okay, I'm doing drug work. I'll put the drug work just to the side for now. We'll just see what questions may come up.
You ever had any nervous friends that said, don't bring Jake around?
They were always weary because his nose dictated everything. So it didn't matter. He just put his nose in your face, or in your lap, or you might open your car door to get out. Well, there was Jake, and his nose was in there sniffing what he could. Like he just about could not turn off. But a lot of fun because I knew he wasn't a super aggressive dog. Like some police dogs, like there's no way you're going to go up and pat that thing. Like it's ferocious. Well, Jake was very, very friendly until the time he got hurt. And that's another thing they teach you down at the academy and developing your bond and all of that, is you don't realise how your bond is going until your dog's hurt. It's like a member of your family. If someone's going to hurt your child, okay, that's probably the best way of relating to it. So once your dog gets hurt out there, you see another side of yourself you never thought you'd have. But yeah, that's horrible when your dog gets hurt, and you just do what you need to have him succeed, and it makes them very weary of people after that. So that was another thing coming out of the academy and into the real world where, you are an operational, police dog handler. There's no Goldman Academy, no sort of, nice little area. This is the real McCoy. And so it can be a little bit hairy out there, but yeah, it makes for a better dog handler and a better dog if they do get hurt, because they've got to be streetwise. So they're not streetwise down at Goulburn because everything is, very protected.
Sanitized.
Yeah, sanitise. That's the word I was trying to figure out. Yeah, no, and the real world and getting streetwise is probably the hardest thing you and your dog have got to learn, because yeah, you don't know what you're in for till you're out there and in the thick of it.
So now you're in the real world. What did it look like?
Oh God, okay. There was different sorts of bit of discrimination, I might add. It was tough being a female.
Actually, just before you touch there, do you want to grab that question?
This one.
Yep.
Valerie Davis has asked, what challenges did you face as a woman?
Great question. I've had to write this one down because I really had to reflect on it this afternoon. For a start, my induction course, I was competing against the blokes, and I know, I'd like to say when they were wanting to select a dog handler, my idea was they're looking for a big, butch, tough girl, pretty tough and gutsy, and that wasn't me. And I knew that, I knew I had that up against me, because I was only slim and slight, and some of the dog handlers, they give you a bit of a hard time, but it was tough. Some of the other operational police out there, you'd go to jobs and, they were super keen to see how you'd go. You're under a close eye everywhere you went because you were different. And some of them knew other dog handlers, and, they just, you had to prove yourself. That's for sure. It was tough, but I learned to compensate as well for my, lack of physical strength. For example, jumping over six foot fences and things like that. I may not have, the upper body strength that a bloke has, but I could get over that fence because I used to jump on my horse from a standstill at his wither, and that's how I got over fences, because that's how I did it on my horse. I didn't always have a saddle. I just had to make do with what I had until I had the money to get one. So, I learned that's how I would get over fences. I would just throw my leg over and up we go. And it was challenging at times because there were times where not only are you wearing your arms at appointments, and my belt around my waist was fully loaded. So you had your firearm, you had your portable radio, you had your torch, you had your handcuffs, you had your ammunition, you had a baton ring. Basically, there was no more room on that belt for anything else. And that was about, never really weighed it, but it was a good sort of 7 kilos or something or other like that. And then if you were wearing a Kevlar bulletproof vest and you were searching backyards, those things were so heavy because they're ceramic plates. So, and you got your big GP boots on and everything else, and away you go. You had to get over these fences and, so your fitness, you had to maintain that, a lot. So I just learnt with my size, I had to, accommodate and find easier ways of doing things. Sometimes I'd be more agile, but, I can get into small places, or had to get up into roof cavities and things like that and put your dog up in there because, there's plenty of roofs that baddies get up into. And, you had to be able to climb up into them and actually get into some of those small areas. So that's where it was good. I'm not going to say I wasn't discriminated against. I was. And it was tough. It was one of the last male bastions in the police force that did not have a female in it. And they kept us out as long as they could until it was just a sign of the times. You had to show equality and things like that. So, yeah, we got there, and there's certainly lots of women in there now. So, go girls.
So, what was the average day for you and Jake?
So, you'd start either a morning shift or afternoon shift. You did lots of night shifts, and you'd also do lots of special operations where, say, out at Moree, they were having lots of trouble with the Indigenous communities out there, running amok. They used to send, 1 or 2 dog handlers out there to go and, just tidy it up. And they were the cream jobs, because you got to go away, and that was pretty cool. So you'd start off, you'd obviously get all kitted up, grab your dog. He's usually like barking his head off, super keen to go to work. He knows what to do. In the car, we had Commodores back in those days, and it got really noisy. He was so excited, and whenever you'd acknowledge a job on the radio, oh my God, I got caught out plenty of times swearing at the dog, still had my hand on the radio, and it was like, but anyway, he was just super keen. And there'd be times where there wasn't a lot of work, so you'd go and do a lot of foot patrols of schools, industrial areas, parks, that type of stuff. You could, you might have to go back to the station and do some of your briefs for any of your arrests and things like that you've done. You'd just be patrolling, waiting for a potential job to back police up, and use your dog in any way that you could. Walking down train stations and dark alleys at night, whatever was needed. Sometimes the stealth mode was the way you'd go. When schools were getting broken into and set alight and things like that at night, you'd park somewhere secluded, and you'd go for your little walkthroughs and stuff like that. I think
it changed so much, I'm guessing, being general duties.
Yeah, definitely. You got to go to a lot of different stations and work with a lot of really cool police, like your network of friends, and the camaraderie you had was really good. But yeah, we do a lot of training as well, whenever we could.
We've got a few questions. You might work through a few of them and get back onto track a bit there as well. But
so Daniel Lenzo's asked, did you have anyone that was stupid enough to confront your dog or think they could outsmart him?
Yeah. So there was one job that, let me see, I'll just lead into, this was probably one of my most outstanding jobs that I really, I look back on and go, wow, that was fantastic. So at Borkham Hills, it was around midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, at there used to be the old Bull and Bush Hotel.
I remember it. I do not remember it so greatly.
Not there anymore.
I can't say I remember it.
No. Anyway, so there are a couple of guys that'd been out there, and one guy decided, no, I'm done. I'm going home, and he left his mate at the pub, and so his mate had a few more drinks, and wandered back home pretty inebriated, and wandered into the wrong house, and wandered into a girl's bedroom, and she's woken up to this stranger in the house and screamed. Dad's come out, this bloke's, realised what was going on and belted the father and took off out the front door. Now, that was basically what I was told when I got called to the job. So harness the dog up for a track. Ideal tracking situation, because it was at night, and it was dewy, and there was no pedestrians, at that time of night. Everything was just really perfect for the track. And seriously, Jake tracked from the front door. He did go across the road, further down, and then cross back over. So what's happened is this bloke's thought he's gone into his mate's house because it looked similar from the outside, and then realised, oh shit, I'm in the wrong place. And then, and then he's taken off, and then he's run down to the correct house, through the front door, and, jumped into bed. Well, we've just done this textbook track where, we've followed his track, and the dog's gone up the stairs to the house, literally to the front door, sniffing up and down the front door. He basically, I feel like I need a cartoon of a police dog pointing. He's in there, like it just, that's what it was like. And so, all right, righto, guys, and that's when you call on the other police, because there's always other police with you, so from their patrol. So, and you always have backup. Like there's always a couple of coppers in tow. And anyway, so I said, righto, he's in there. So I've basically finished my job, and I'm waiting down on the footpath talking with the sergeant. And next thing you know, the description of this bloke appears. He's taken off out the back door. So he said to the coppers, can I just go and grab my shoes? They're just at the back door there, because he was being arrested. And he thought, right, now's my chance. And he took off out the back door, round the side of the house, across the front yard. And that's where I've seen him. And I'm like, wait, what? So I sent my dog, and he's taken off after him round down the side of the house. And by the time I've got to him, he's grabbed Jake around the dewlap, and he's picked him up, and he's thrown him into the side of the house a couple of times and fell down. And that's what I've seen. And I'm just like, oh my God. Anyway, this is what I mean. When you know your dog's hurt and been hurt, you just become possessed. And I'm just like furious at this bloke, and I'm just like, let him go. And I'm wrestling with him, and he's grabbed me at the time. And anyway, I belted him quite a few times for him to let him go, with something that I probably shouldn't have done. But anyway, let the dog go, and Jake was just mauling his legs. He was so cranky. Anyway, typical of other police working with a dog handler, they don't want to get too close to the dog, because that many times they've been bitten. And, anyway, I look along the fence, and there's 3 coppers standing up against the fence, and I'm like, come on, fellas, give me a hand. We ended up grabbing him and handcuffing him and taking him back to the station. Well, part of your duty when your dog's bitten someone is you've got to put in all the reports of the injuries. So I've gone and seen this bloke, and he's gone. I said, oh, have you got any injuries, from the dog? And he, I said, show me around your legs and all of that. He's going, no, they're nothing. That was a bike accident I had the other day, but my flaming head hurts. And I'm not really sure how that happened. Not. And that was the only, well, that's what I mean. You just do whatever it takes, when your dog's been hurt. That dog was so streetwise after that. I could walk him on a hill, and there was no one that was coming near me or him. He turned quite reactive. And it was good, because that's how they need to be. They need to be.
Did you feel safer with him after he changed? Not safe is probably not the right word, but
no, you
feel armoured.
Yeah, you do. You
he
do.
became a dog then,
you do, because I don't know. You do feel they're going to protect you, But it's not until like I said, you get out there, your dog gets hurt, someone comes at you when they really switch on all those tendencies. So that, that made him so reactive, and it was good. Like I said, it's what he needed. But he didn't need to get hurt, but he needed to know that this is the real world. We used to do a lot of foot patrols too down at Cabramatta, where the drugs were really bad down there. And did you know dogs can discriminate against certain types of people?
They learn by association, right?
Yeah. So Jake did not like Asians. Pardon any Asians.
That's okay. It is what it is, right?
And so we used to do a lot of foot patrols, and it was good when you were bored and nothing's happening. You'd go for a walk down Cabramatta, and you'd walk down there, and you'd have these Asians sort of walking past you, oblivious to the fact that you've got a dog. And Jake would just lunge at them, and they would just jump onto the other side of the footpath, and you'd go, oh, Jake, good boy, mate, well done, mate, good boy. And just have that bit of fun. But he thought they were weird. They were weird. So a little bit of discrimination there too, definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
Question here from Michelle Hanley. She's asked, what was your proudest moment with Jake?
Another good question. My proudest moment, I reckon, would be I went to a missing person out at Penrith. There's a nursing home somewhere out there near there must like
I think it's near Emu
pub
Plain.
or a bar or something or other. It's not Panthers. Anyway, it was near some sort of a hotel. And anyway, this dear old man had dementia, and he said to the staff that he's going to get on a train to Strathfield to see his son. And from where this nursing home was, he could have done that. It was quite accessible for him to do that. So it had been 24 hours before police were called. And so because they all just assumed he's gotten on a train, he's gone to see his son, that type of stuff. Well, anyway, got called to this job, and the nursing home had big grasslands around it and a bit of marshland. So there was water and some sort of marsh. I can't quite remember. Can't remember exactly where it was. So I sent Jake out for a search and just thought, we'll just go for a bit of a wander, have a bit of a look around here. And sure enough, he found this fellow. He found him in the long grass. He passed out. He had hypothermia and, had sunburnt, and, he really wasn't in a good way at all. And I was just so surprised, because sometimes we can all get a bit complacent and we can all sort of think, he's gotten on a train, rah, rah, rah. Yeah. And it really taught me, just not to have doubts like that. So obviously, called an ambulance. This lovely man was, taken to hospital, and he was okay. And I went back the next day because I wanted to meet this fellow in, back in his normal sort of environment and the state that he was in, and just meet him. And it was so sad because I didn't know anything about dementia back then. And the nursing staff sort of said, look, honey, he's not even going to know who you are. He's not even going to remember what happened yesterday. Like he has dementia really, really bad. And as much as that was probably a very proud moment for me, it was a really sad moment as well, because I just, we found him and he was okay, but sadly, he had dementia. So, yeah. Yeah.
Karen Higgins has asked a question. There's a couple of parts of her question. First of all, is what's the average work life for a police dog?
Good question. They average out about, they like to say 10 years. They, back in my day, they are actually on the asset register of the police force. Okay. And I remember something like $30,000 to train a police dog. So that's what their worth was back then. I don't know about it now. And strangely enough, and stupidly enough, the older your dog, gets from, out in the real world, he's actually becoming more valuable because he's more streetwise, he's learning more, he's been exposed to more, he's getting better at, the real life stuff. Their price devaluates. Their asset amount goes down the older they become. I hope to God that's changed now because, to get a streetwise, a good
absolutely
working dog,
time and effort.
They're worth a mint. So they like them to back then to get 10 years out of them. But I only got with Jake, 4 years. So Jake would have been about 6 when he developed a horrible condition called spondylosis, which is I believe it's like a deterioration of the cartilage in the spine, and very arthritic, very, very painful. And it was so painful that he couldn't jump into the back of a Commodore. That's how we first sort of detected it. So sadly, we took him down to Bob Zamet's and had all the tests in the world, and that's what he came out as having. And that was my time then to have to retire him, which was devastated because it was sooner than I thought. So yeah.
Yeah. Did you think at first maybe he was just discriminating against Commodores?
Don't go down that track. No.
I love him. I'm a Holden boy. There's another part to Karen's question here, and basically she's asking who were the instructors at the academy. Like, what was their background? Were they police officers? Were they dog trainers?
No, police officers. So they were all police officers. So they'd been, either doing general duties or highway patrol or whatnot, and then got into the dog squad themselves, and then decided, okay, I've had enough operational work. I want to be a trainer. So there was 3 trainers down there. We had a sergeant and 2 senior constables. So they lived, down at Goulburn. They were also involved in the first lot of police puppies using police dogs. And at that time, we only had all our police dogs were males. We only had 1 female dog that was my sergeant's. Her name was Sage. She was a brilliant dog, but she was de-sexed. But so we used a police dog over, a female that wasn't operational, and bred puppies and whatnot. But most of the time, we would select our dogs through members of the public. This is really archaic back in the day. People that didn't want their shepherds anymore had to fit the criteria. We would maybe pick 1 out of 100 dogs that we assessed, having those qualities I mentioned before about the high drive and retrieval. They had to be, 12 months of age, all those sorts of things. So it was really hard to find a good dog. And then you may have that dog, put him on a training course, and he just mightn't fit the bill. He might be capable of the work. So it was hard to come by a good dog back then. But I believe things are totally changed now, and they're breeding their own with their own blood, working bloodlines and stuff like that, which is good.
It's funny you mention that, because some government departments still actually kind of lotto dogs, right? They still go through rescue groups and
Yeah,
rehoming organizations. While a lot of military are still, like have you said, got their breeding cells, but
yeah.
there are other government organizations out there still doing it the way you just explained.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I've actually got a dog at home now, a German Shepherd called Kaiser. I named him after my very first shepherd we had as kids. When I saw him, I just had to have this dog anyway. Paid a fair bit of money. Came from a lovely home down there in Sydney. And I knew, because the owners either wanted to rehome him, but they were quite specific about their needs for him, or ring the dog squad and see if they wanted him. And when I saw him, and he had all the characteristics of a police dog. he just amazing. Anyway, he came to live with me, and sadly, that dog has the same condition as Jake. He's now 8 years old. He's got spondylosis. He's very, very crippled. He's on cartrophin and Medicam and all that sort of stuff. So, anyway, but so I like to think that I saved him from the dog squad. But he had all the characteristics that would have suited them. So, yeah.
So after he retired, what did life look like for Jake?
Okay, so after he retired, I decided to leave the dog squad because if I was to, like Jake came back with me, he was to live the rest of his life out with me, but I had the option of retraining another dog. And I knew that would be another commitment for at least, a good 5 to 10 years in the dog squad. And my biological clock was ticking, and I'm just like, oh, you know what? I actually think I'm done here. We bought the house that we're in now out in the Upper Hunter, and I thought, I want to go and start a family. So I transferred to Muswellbrook and worked in general duties there. I had Jake at home, and I ended up going to highway patrol. And I also, with Jake, bred my one and only litter of pups. He was a sire, and I had a very good friend of mine that bred beautiful German Shepherds down at Castlereagh. And anyway, she was a maiden bitch, and I had no idea, what was expected, having a litter of pups and what was to go on. So anyway, she had 8 pups, and one of those pups was a dwarf German Shepherd, the smallest dwarf Bob Zammit down there at Vineyard had ever seen. So I remember wishing one day, like most young people, that I wish they would stay puppies. Oh, there's puppies. Cute. Well, I got a puppy that stayed a puppy, and she was quite deformed. God love her. I called her Monique. She used to paddle with her front legs. She had to be on thyroid tablets all her life, but being a dwarf, not meant to live long life, she outlived her brother. Anyway, out of that litter of 8, only 3 survived, because I would go to work down, an hour away, and I thought, the mother would go back into the whelping box, feed her babies, and I'd come home from an 8-hour shift, 2 hours travel, an hour each way, and, checked that the puppies were alive. And unbeknownst to me, she hadn't been feeding them, and I had no idea. I just thought, nature would take over and everything's,
Not all rainbows and butterflies, is
easy
it?
peasy Japanesey. Yeah. So I learnt the hard way, and I was so emotional about losing these puppies, and I just, that was me and breeding done and dusted in one go. So so Jake only had one litter, and I truly think, in the real, like, if he was out in the wild, he wouldn't have sired many. He just, that was an interesting exercise, even just getting the mate. Oh my God.
What was the process then of, let's call it like decommissioning an asset like him? Like, were there hurdles and hoops to jump through?
No. So obviously, you as that dog's handler that had bonded and worked with that dog for so long, you got first option if you wanted him. And, the majority of dog handlers don't part with their dogs ever, really. So he was, decommissioned and signed over to me, and, lived the rest of his life out here on our property. So we're on 30 acres out here and lots of room to run. And we, at the time, I'm just thinking back just to, finish Jake's story. Being in highway patrol, I would go to a lot of accidents and, fatals and all that sort of stuff. And went to a bad fatal involving, a family of 5, where there was one surviving young boy. And it basically, it did a lot of damage. So I'd like to say it was like I got bit really badly by a big black dog without an attack arm, and hence it took me 10 months to realise I've got PTSD. And that particular accident, the very next day, Jake ended up with bloat, and I had to have him put down. So he was too far gone. So I had a terrible time back then.
And that might lead into that. What are you doing now?
Okay, so I retired from the police force back in 2016. I prefer to call myself a police veteran, a little bit like a Vietnam vet. Retired, medically discharged, and I ended up working with children at a beautiful little local preschool. And I worked there just shy of 14 years. I had a brilliant time teaching preschoolers, 3 to 5-year-olds, just their beautiful little minds, their trainability, their imagination, their the beautiful families that we have in the area were, and are fantastic people. Watching these little ones grow and, getting them to that stage where they're off to big school. And big school was right next door. Our little preschool was inside the school grounds. And then you got to see their growth through primary school as well. And, being, a small community, you'd watch them progress through high school, and even now, a couple of years after high school, I still see some of my, I had them at my preschool, type thing. So, that growth has been fantastic. But about 3 weeks ago, I retired from preschool. So I'd had enough, and it was now time for me to spend some time at home. I've been involved with German Shepherd Rescue New South Wales, some amazing women and blokes that volunteer there. There's I aspire to be like one particular woman. I won't mention her name, but she started.
I think she might even be listening tonight.
Oh God, I hope so. That would be awesome.
I may see her name on our list here.
Well, I'm just going to brag about her. She has rescued and rehomed well over 1,000 German Shepherds in her time. And she is amazing, the time and effort that she dedicates. There's another couple of women that busting to tell you their names, but I can't.
I'm fortunate enough to know who you're speaking about.
Yeah, I know.
And they're fantastic people.
Fantastic people. Absolute. They're dedicated. They drive to the end of the world to rescue a German Shepherd, in need. And, having the camaraderie we all have. Once a year, we get to have a get together and have our ladies' day, and we have a feed, and some of them bring their dogs, and we just have a chat, and we just that just my whole year is based around that particular day. I love those days, catching up.
And how long have you been involved with that particular organisation now?
I'm going to say only about 5 years. So I started off my intention was to be a foster carer, but then I ended up with the title of a failed foster carer. And that's when you collect them. That's when you collect them, because to me, especially with my PTSD, German Shepherds are my world, and all I wanted was to have as many German Shepherds on our place that I could fit, and there's just never enough. And then I learnt the hard way. I had quite a few at the time, probably nowhere near as much as you guys have, but I'm going to say I've probably had about, we've got two Kelpies, 2 working dogs that are my husband's, and I've got 2 little fluffies. And then I reckon I would have had about 11 or 12 German Shepherds. Probably the most I had 2 sets of bonded pairs. I've got 4 of my own that were failed. And I just kept failing. And then I realised with all of these shepherds accumulating that they weren't thriving like they should be. Like, yes, they were having the time of their lives, but being a herd animal, being a pack animal, there was always a leader, and then there was always a subordinate. And then, there was, I've got a bit of a rank happening with my 4 that I've got, now as it is. But I could see that, that bonded pair needs to go to a home together where they can be loved, and spent the time, and the unconditional love and all of that. That's where they need to be. And so I started successfully rehoming, and I was a bit fussy about where they would go. I always had input into the applications, and would make contact. And as a result, I've met some lifelong friends. One of my dogs is up in like Bundaberg, somewhere around there, and I have such a good friendship with his new owners. A lot of people that I still keep in contact with, and that's my reward, knowing they've gone to a better place and they're being enjoyed and loved, and they send photos and things like that. That's just icing on the cake for me.
Absolutely. And you mentioned bonding there, and well, let's be honest, like having experienced it ourselves, like some of these shepherds actually aren't easy to rehome, right? They get very bonded to their family. They're a pretty dedicated animal.
Yeah.
They're a bit different to some other breeds of dogs out there that I suppose we're more familiar with in the, let's call it the stock dog scene, because they're all working dogs at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
But like some of these dogs, they can really, if something happens to a handler, some of the dogs can actually go downhill quite quickly themselves.
Yeah, 100%. They can get very anxious and very needy. Like they're very routine, habitual animals. Like probably most breeds do, but I just know because I've always had German shepherds, and I did have cattle dogs at one stage as well when I was growing up. But they like their structure, they like their routine, like the walks of the mornings, or the runs on the quad bike, or that type of stuff. And you've certainly got to set your boundaries with them, like I don't let all my dogs in the house all at once. I'll pick a couple at a time. They'll have their time in, and I'll rotate them, and but they're all made to feel special in every way. If I've got one hand on one dog, I've got a foot on this dog and a hand on that dog, kind of, sharing the love. And again, that's what comes into that genuine emotion that you share with your dog. You make eye contact. You're patting your dog, you're smiling, and they know when you're real. They know when you really mean it. And I think that's where the bond is pretty strong with me and my dogs. But when I introduce, just going back to the rescue, if I was to rescue a shepherd, I go through a bit of a process here at home that I've kind of figured out, a little bit myself. So 4 of my shepherds, I've got Jeddah. She came from an Aboriginal commune, actually, and just used to wander about everywhere and go on walkabouts. And anyway, the council picked her up, and she couldn't stay there, so she got in contact with me. And Jeddah was actually the name of a red cattle dog I had as a kid. And anyway, Jeddah's a female, and I'm going to describe her as my Barbie doll. Oh, hi, I'm Jeddah. So if you're introducing a new rescue dog, Jeddah's the first one I meet up with on the other side of the fence, and and Jeddah's so submissive and wouldn't hurt a fly and that type of stuff. And then I'd go my next one up, which would be Coda. And Coda, he's a failed foster, and I named him Coda after a police dog whose handler selected me way back in the day. So I've named him after a police dog, and he's the coolest dog. This dog. I ended up with another pup out of his same litter, and I also ended up with Coda's parents as well, a bonded pair that I've rehomed that I desperately wanted to keep, but they're the ones that I really could see needed to move on and thrive in a home of their own. Anyway, so Coda is very much just like a playful puppy. He's a couple of years old, but he's just, loves life, So then I'd slowly introduce that new dog to that. Then I've got a dog, Sarge. He's a long-haired shepherd, Sarge, short for sergeant. So he's my subordinate. We call him the fun police because he walks around with a bit of black pipe in his mouth, and if playtime's getting too rough and burly, he's in there with that pipe. Whoa, break it up, nah, don't do that here. And he knows his role. He's this he likes to sit on the outside and just watch the play, but he's the fun police that, things are getting a bit rowdy. He knows what he does. And then Kaiser, my the beautiful one I got from Sydney. Well, Kaiser I always thought was a backyard bully. He was always barking and really aggressive and just like he wouldn't get on with anyone, and he was just like really hard. And he comes from a working dog line. I've never had a working line German Shepherd before, and he was hard work. But now he loves his job, and he's the last one I introduce him to because he's got a lot of bark about him, and he can put someone in their place. And like he's my sort of dominant, but he can, So I usually sort of settle them in like that, and it can sometimes, I take over a whole day if it's only just me there, or if my husband's home, I'll, give him a dog, and we'll make that sort of transition a bit quicker. But yeah, those 4 shepherds, they're great. They've got their purpose, and they've got their job, and yeah, they're pretty cool.
They sound like an awesome team. And you mentioned there a little bit earlier before we got into those dogs there that obviously you're in the Upper Hunter region on a few acres there, and your husband's got some working dogs.
Yeah. Yeah, so we've got about 80 sheep here at the moment, and we've always, like, my husband's always been interested in working dogs, and around our area, we used to have quite a big trial every year, locally, and we'd go down to watch and see what we could learn and pick up, and we didn't get a really good reception. There wasn't a lot of people that wanted to help, and like we'd sort of say, oh look, we're super keen to get into this looks pretty cool. How do we go about sort of getting involved in this sort of dog trialing and 3 sheep and that sort of thing? We didn't get any sort of welcoming with open arms or anything like that, so we've had to sort of do a bit of learning. Like my husband's got a terrific mate, Todd Aiken is his name, and we've got one of Todd's dogs, and I'm going to do a bit of name dropping here. So Gray's best dog is Pip, Belledale Pip. She's a 4-year-old Kelpie, and her breeding goes back to, on the dam side, Guida Jazz, which is a Tony Overton dog, bitch. And she goes back to Sunraiser George and Capri Nina. And then on the top end, on the father side, Pip's dad is Yippee Tony, which is the dog that Todd's got. And he's by Harewood Spike and
Toomsy dog.
Something Sally. I couldn't really read the writing, but anyway, she's a great dog, and Todd has helped us tenfold with getting her going. Like, we're best mates. Like Gray and Todd talk like every night, and we've learnt a lot through Todd. So just recently we went to a Gary White dog school, where we took Pip and Gray's other dog, Eve. My son came to that, and Pip did so well. Like, she held her own, and we did not look out of place. Yeah, she's going really, really good. So that's an interest. We're sort of a path we're heading down at the moment. It's more Gray working. I'm sort of there on the sidelines, doing a bit of fence sitting, but I don't mind barking a few orders.
I was just going to ask it. Just on that, there's another question here.
John Burriston has asked, have you been to any working dog schools, which you have? If so, what did you get out of it, and what similarities are there in training a working dog to a police dog?
So that's a good question. So your working dog, obviously you've got to have your control. Your control at the start. So that comes in line with your obedience, okay? If you don't have control, if you can't make your dog sit, stay, drop, that type of stuff, obviously they're going to run amok on sheep. So you've got to have that control. The thing with your working dogs, they've got that high drive, which is another comparison. Fantastic. That movement of stock, they just hone in on. Obviously, ours is, doesn't quite relate, with the police dogs in the animal sort of form. And in all honesty, you actually didn't want a police dog that, would see a rabbit or a roo or anything out on a track. Like, oh my God, that was your worst nightmare. But I was so lucky with Jake because he didn't worry about that type of stuff. So your control, your obedience, even sort of your patience, those sorts of things were very real. And obviously you start off small. So your training times, like your 3-minute type training sessions, very similar to what we started with as well. You would use with your working dogs, thinking of your wind and your commands with your dog. I know you've got your whistles, but you also use your verbal commands. That's going to get affected by wind and things like that. If the sheep are all downwind and your dog is downwind, well, you're going to have to yell pretty damn loud and hard for that dog to hear you, because everything's going against you. So, I know I learnt on that school that, even wind affects, your control of your dog and things like that. That's a good question. I'd have to think a bit more about that one and get back to you on that one.
What about letting it go a bit? Like, well, let's be honest. Like walking around with Jake was like walking around with a bullet in the chamber, right?
Yeah.
And then so you have to have a lot of control. But then a working dog, you kind of want to have a little less control on them sometimes, so they can think for themselves, or a little less mechanical.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Because the majority of the time with a police dog, you either have them on a lead or you have them on a long line, and when you don't, they're out there searching. So they're doing that sort of search. Whereas with your working dogs and that, you've got their visual, okay, and they also use their nose as well. But it's more visual. But you rarely see a working dog putting his nose down on the ground to track those sheep. He's mainly using like your airborne scent, and his eyes, and so yes, the nose is still working, but his eyes and his instincts are just superior to what they're doing there. Whereas with us, as a police dog, because you're out in suburbia, you've got traffic, you've got people, you've got bikes, you've got all sorts of things. You might be tracking or searching for an offender, and you see him and he's about to run across the M1, freeway after this bloke. You've got to go back to your control, and you've got to yell as hard and loud as you can to make that dog stop, because he's going to get skittled. Your controls probably your control and your obedience is probably the definite comparisons that you need for that question. Yeah.
What about the fact that like your police dog, you mentioned like that toy's a massive reward to them, when the toy to, let's say, like a sheepdog is the sheep, right? That's the biggest reward at the end of the day.
Yes. Yes.
Do you find that hard, like letting go that little bit of control to let them work a bit, like, because that is the ultimate reward when they do something good?
No, because really at the end of the day, you want to have that catch. You want that body at the end. You want to be able to arrest someone. That's your big reward,
Yeah.
And as much as, a lot of the time, your dog might get a bite out of it, or, it's that play you have at the end. Once you've got that, that, baddie arrested and handcuffed and all of that, like, chest is pumping, yeah, well done, good job, that dog knows it just from the pat and all of that. But this is where having your training days is vital, with other police dogs, other dog handlers and all of that, so that dog gets a win. Because sometimes you'll do a search or a track and there's no offender, and why isn't there an offender? He's jumped in a car and driven off, or he's he's just not there anymore. So your dog doesn't get a win, and you don't it's inevitable. Sometimes that happens. They're gone. So you've got to equal that up with your training sessions when you're not operational, so that dog gets a win, so he gets a play, so he gets sort of, that pump up. Yeah, you're the man. Good dog. Yeah. That sort of, the reward, because you got to pump your dog up. Like he's got to have his chest out and, knows his stuff. So it's a bit like, I know this is a little bit off track.
You're right.
I've had this image in my head. It's like, when your dog goes to the toilet, okay, and they go to the toilet, and then what do with their paws? They dig the ground, yeah, their back legs come out and they dig the ground, yeah. What are they doing? The dog's saying, yes, Dan was here. I'm it, mate. I left that.
Yeah.
I left that.
What am I? And he trots back to you, and, it's like his signature. He's marked his stamp on the fact that this is me, like dogs are driven by smell and that type of stuff. So, that too, they're scratching at the ground, they're disturbing the ground, the scents come up. He's also left his business there, and, it's like a calling card. Yeah, Dan was here. So, yeah.
And with Dan's here now, and with your working dogs there, what would you guys like to achieve with your working dogs?
We
Or your
just
stock
want
dogs?
We just would love a start out there in the working dog community, doing what you guys do, doing what I'm going to do another name drop. Tracy Lindsay, she does it, and Marie McKillop. That's your mum, Laura. We just want to get a bit of a start and have a bit of fun. I've listened to a heap of your podcasts, and so many people comment on, the end of the day, you're sitting around with your dogs and you're having a beer and you're having a chat, and the friendships and, the tips people might give you, and just like, you're all in it for the same reason, and that's to have fun. And okay, you've got your serious people, that's cool. But there's just people that just want to go out there and, and work their dogs and learn, new skills and, how to improve their dogs. So, yeah, we probably want to, start off sort of something a little bit easy. We'll probably sit on the fence for a little bit and make sure we've sort of sharpened up our the skills. But yeah, definitely love to do what you guys do.
There you go. On 9th of May in the Upper Hunter there, we've got the Scone Trial. So come
Right.
out for a day. We
Yep.
plan on being out there. Laura Marie going to be out there
I think
as well.
so, yeah.
Yeah.
Come out, and I can't promise too many beers for a couple of hours drive.
No.
Kids, but
No,
I'll always look for a
just
cold one.
Yeah, fantastic. We'll be there. Just about the mingling and catching up with people. It's amazing how many people do that sport that you just had no idea do it.
Yes.
It's people that live in the Hawkesbury that may not have, big acreage and whatnot, but they find a way to go and do training. They network and they make friends and go to training schools and, develop this, this community that want to help each other. So that's what we want to get into.
Even to you here on tonight, like, you know, mum and dad have known you for years and all the rest, and then Dan says, "Oh, I met this really cool bird," Nat met you, and it turns out, you know, mum and dad have known you for years. You're my godmother, and it's such a small world. And now you're on Dog Talk. Like, it's just
look,
just crazy how it works.
100%. And I am the worst dog in the world, but I follow you on Facebook, so I can on you, my dear. But look, friends for life, and it is like dogs bring people together, horses bring people together, and you know, like so many people say, you know, half the time you don't, you know, your dog's name before you.
Yeah,
you know, the owner's name sort of thing. But terrific.
That's awesome. Was there a question tonight that stood out to you? And I'll win a bag of Enduro high energy food for working dogs with real kangaroo meat.
There was a question from Val about
as challenges you face as a woman.
Yeah. Because that, honestly, that I think that sort of speaks my whole story, you know, way back then. And like, there's a lot of, you know, female dog handlers out there now doing specialist things. And I certainly, towards the end of my time as a police dog handler, I would do a lot of lectures to other female police that wanted to be dog handlers, and there were some like induction schools and things like that, just to show them, you know, if that's what they're interested in, this is what you're exposed to. And I was, again, very honest, and I believe that women make brilliant dog handlers, okay? But I think we are far better suited to specialist police dog handlers. So your drug work, you know, your bomb detection dogs, your all of those type specialist sections, okay? I'm not saying we can't be general purpose dog handlers, but you know, there's challenges out there. You know, you're searching for a hardened criminal that's broken out of, you know, Goulburn jail, and you know, he knows that if he gets caught, he's going back to jail and never to be released. And you know, that just the risks and all that involved. Yes, you've got your dog. Yes, you've got your gun. Yes, you've got, you know, all those sorts of things. But I just feel it is a challenge that, you know, unless you're about to go toe to toe with some big burly bloke, and if you can do that, fantastic. Or, you know, good on you, fantastic. But I would personally, you know, my thoughts were that we make brilliant police dog handlers, but more for the specialist side. So,
Love your honesty. So, Valerie Davies, if you could get in contact with us, I did get the name right, didn't I?
Yeah.
Yep. If you could get in contact with us here at Dog Talks, flick us a message, and we'll go from there. You got a bag of Enduro coming your way. Also, Deb, bag of Enduro coming your way. I'm sure your shepherds there are going to love it.
Yeah.
As just a token of our appreciation for coming on and having a chat with us tonight.
Awesome. I could certainly have talked so much more about like so many different areas of policing, but I knew I had to keep it in a so anyway, but I've enjoyed every minute of it, and you know, the questions are fantastic. I'm glad I got some, because sometimes you sort of think, oh, I don't know if anyone's really going to be that interested. I don't know. So it was refreshing.
No, there was a lot of interest, and thanks heaps for giving us your time tonight.
Pleasure.
Laura's not going to let you go that way, let you go that easy. And just remember, you haven't got your service revolver with you anymore when you answer this question.
So Would you rather fight one duck the size of a horse or 20 horses the size of ducks?
I'm going to say one duck the size of a horse. Don't know how I'd do it. I'd probably send one of my dogs on them. Probably one of those little fluffies would bring them down. That's little fluffies. And I'd be cooking a roast duck for dinner.
You'd have to pull one of the fluffies out of the duck's neck from choking on it at first.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time
Pleasure.
tonight, Deb. Much
Pleasure.
appreciated. And to everyone that got on tonight and asked questions and everyone listening back, thank you very much. Much appreciated. And please remember, we learn every day. And the day we stop learning will be a sad day for all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you and good night.
Thank you.